Hey everybody, welcome to my kitchen again. It's way too hot to be outside right now, so I'm in here doing this. Alright, so I have several questions that are being asked on YouTube and Facebook about woods, dry woods, wet woods. First of all, with safety. You see my video where I went outside and saved my ball bare feet. I wouldn't recommend anybody do that. I won't recommend anyone do anything that they're not comfortable doing or that they feel is not safe. I would hope that you're using your own discretion when it comes to safety. Obviously, wear a mask, wear a face shield, and someone has commented about my gloves, and I get it. There's a potential hazard with a lot of things. So especially wood turning in itself. Don't wear a glove if you're not comfortable wearing a glove. The reason why, and this may or may not be a good enough excuse, but the reason why I turn with a glove is because one, my hand gets sweaty, so the tool tends to slip. That was the number one reason why I started wearing a glove when I first started turning. Number two, the wood coming off, those chips, the shavings, sometimes they're so hot. I turned cedar one time that actually burnt my finger. The shavings coming off there sometimes are just hot. And I'm not telling you to wear a glove if you're experiencing that. Maybe you should just, I don't know, maybe I should just toughen up my hands a little bit. I don't know. My glove is tight. There's no loose anything on it. Just use your own discretion. There's a lot of great turners out there that use gloves when they turn, and I think it's because they're comfortable at the level that they're at and confident in the way that they're utilizing that glove. And I would say if you're not comfortable with wearing a glove, don't. If you feel that it's safety for you, I mean, everything we do is hazardous when it comes to turning. I mean, the fact that you have wood spinning so fast and you're putting a sharp tool to it, it's everything about this is can have safety hazards written all over it. So please use your own discretion. I'm not telling you to do things a certain way or not do them a certain way. You have to take responsibility for your actions and your choices, and the same for me. So that being said, definitely don't go out there barefooted. I'm sure there's a lot of you that do and just don't care, and that's completely up to you. I tend to do a lot of things barefooted. My husband gets on to me about it. And I learned the hard way because there's been a lot of times where I've hurt my feet pretty good. So as far as turning wet or dried wood, now I turn a lot of wet wood because that's what I have. I don't buy bowl blanks. Really the only dried wood I have is smaller pieces. A friend of mine gives to me that her husband makes karate stuff out of exotic woods, some beautiful pieces, and a lot of times I'll segment those together and turn. So that's really the only dried wood, or if I have some that's been sitting out long enough where it's dry. But other than that, I don't buy dry. As far as dry woods goes, I don't, when it comes to making bowls and things like that, don't have a lot of. Now you have options with when you're turning green wood. You can turn a bowl blank, which I didn't bring one out here with me. The only one I actually have is from a friend of mine, Michael Cruz on Facebook. He sent me, he has Naughty by Nature, I think is his website. I might have mentioned it in one of my videos. He sent me a beautiful bowl blank, and I turned this one. It's silver spalted maple. I finished it up a couple weeks ago. I did video it. I am going to be putting a giveaway for this bowl, so look out for that one soon. So you turn it, get distracted easily. You turn a rough bowl blank, so you leave 10% of its total size. So if it's, you just measure it, and whatever that measurement is, you add 10% to it. So that way, when you dry it, which there's several methods for that. So like I said, I'm just sharing with you my experience with things. So I can't tell you how to dry bowls because I don't. I'm too impatient for it. That's why I turn everything wet. So as far as methods, there are tons of different methods. A lot. So just search drying bowl methods. Some people make awesome kilns out of old freezers, which I think is awesome. I thought about doing that. I also thought about doing a solar kiln, and you can look up videos on how to make those. There are some guys out there that do those. I don't have them right off the top of my head. Then there's denatured alcohol you can use. You soak them in. I don't know how long. I don't know none of that. I've never done it, so I don't know. And I'm sure it all depends on the wood as well. Then there's do your bowl blank and then throw it in the shavings that you just cut into a bag for several weeks. The point of it is that you want to slow down the drying process. So when that happens, the wood starts to split and separate. Now, if you have a bowl that's drying slowly, that separation is either not going to happen or not happen as much. But if anything, instead of it cracking, it will just move. It'll be oblonged, or it'll just dry all funky. But if you're turning a bowl blank, you're going to return it again anyway after it's reached a certain percent of moisture, and then it doesn't really matter. So my way of doing it may not be the best way, and it may not be the right way. I'm just telling you the way I do it, and it works for me. And this, in some woods I'm like, darn it, I should have just waited till it dried. But I'm really trying to right now learn to cut and tooling and learning the woods and how they feel and things like that. So the end result, I don't have the greatest expectation. I'm not to where I'm expecting, miracles out of these abilities. So let me share with you some things that I've turned. Most recently, the spalted bowl that I did a few videos back. I love it. It's beautiful, and you can probably tell, especially right in here, that it has moved. I have not seen any cracks or anything yet, so it hasn't moved to the point of cracking, but it has moved a little bit. And usually the first thing that I can tell if it's moved, you can see that it's not the most it's rocking a little bit, which is fine. I mean, some people love that about the woods. I'm okay with it on certain things. There are some things I will go back and sand the bottoms of to flatten them back out. But this irregular rim stuff, I guess it depends on what look you're going for and what you're willing to accept in your expectations of your own work or expectations of others. So that would be personal preference. So that's the most recent. It's warped a little bit. And some of you might be going, but I want it, I don't want it to warp and whatever. Well, then probably don't turn wet wood, or turn it wet and then leave enough to where you can turn it again later and then that away. But even then, wood's gonna move, so I'm not saying it'll move that much, but it will move. This other one, you see me turn. I have a video. The other day, I was putting something on the counter and it fell. And look, I don't know if you can see that split right there. Boy, it broke it. Now, there's several ways that I've thought about fixing it. I haven't gotten around to it yet. It also cracked a little bit over here, but that actually closed up. Put a little bit of super glue on it, but it actually kind of closed up pretty good on its own. But then, of course, you have this side where it's stressed. This, I can't remember the moisture level in it. I did measure it. It was probably somewhere like 10 to 12. It just takes a little bit of moisture, especially here in Florida, for things to move. Now, this is also spalted wood, so spalted wood tends to, because it's already technically rotting, is the reason why it's spalted, tends to be a little weaker, especially in those darker areas where the mold or fungus or whatever it is has grown. So that one I will probably put some epoxy with some color in it. First I'll try to put a clamp around it and get the seam to come together, and if I can't, then I will just fill it and then, you know, hand sand it. But I have a lot of pieces like this that I have to do some touch-up things on. Some of them I leave because they look just fine, you know, with the cracks or whatever else. Here's another one that I turned. It's oak, and you can see that crack right there. It was a crotch piece, so especially in those crotch pieces, you might have some separation. This was turned wet as well, and this is also oak. And the base of it is all right. It's a little moving, but mostly you can see that it's cracked here. That one I may just leave. I think also it look nice with a fill there. Here's one that really warped. I mean, look at that oval crazy shaping thing. I used a UV resin in here with some food coloring and some of that powder, eyeshadow powder I think I used to color that. It's pistol foot, but it is really like, it is really wobbly. Of course, some of these things I may like sell if I ever do a market or something like that, and just sell it for, I don't know. I may not sell. Sometimes things like this is just like, that's embarrassing. But it's experience that I couldn't buy. And it's knowledge that you really, yeah, you can, yeah, someone's going to tell you it's going to warp, but what is warp? You know, you're like, what is warping? How much warping? Yada, yada, yada. So, and then here's another really cool piece. It was a branch that, you know, goes this way, and I just, and then turned it, and then made a little, I hollowed it out in there. It's like really hollowed out. Very surprised I got it as hollowed. Sorry, it's dusty. It's been sitting around. So I really love this piece. The shine has dulled on it, which is okay because I'll probably spray it with lacquer. And you can probably see right here is a crack right down it. This one I'm going to fill with a UV resin as well. Sand it and then probably do a spray lacquer on it when it's all finished. But a very unique piece that I think is worth repairing. Some things I'm like, it's not worth repairing, whatever. It's just to turn to see if I can do something. It's another piece of, I think this is a white oak. And all down, there's a crotch piece as well. And this is where you get some really awesome feathering. This one has a, if you can see it, look at all that dust flying. I don't know if you can see it really well. It has an arrow. You can see it on the bottom too. Right there. It has an arrow in it. Not an arrow like as an actual arrow like that someone would shoot, but the bark or wood or the inclusion in it from the crotch piece has an arrow, which is pretty cool. Or a slice of pizza with a handle, or a pie scoop. I don't know. Anyways, it moved quite a bit. I mean, so much to where it's like, it like crazy, did this crazy ripple stuff. I may or may not fill it with resin. I have it on my shelf in there, and it's a live edge. Live edge, and this is also, was it end green? Yes, sorry. This is end green. So the tree grows this way, and the bowl was made tree going this way versus this way. All right, so that's that. And oh, and this one and this one I think were made not from the same tree, but white oak. And see how the spalting is very similar in it. This one's of course darker, it's spalted a little longer, but that one has some really dark. I like this because the contrast in it. My husband says it looks like the old style world maps, you know, the old maps. And I turned this, originally wanted to just do a bowl, and I ended up just going with this shape with a lid or a lip, and it didn't move. I don't think this moved too much. The inside did, but for sure my lid did. I made the lid out of the, another whole, matter of fact, it was a whole big old piece that I had to cut down just to one small piece. And now, it doesn't fit on there. I still have my tenon on here, so if I wanted to, I can just put this back on and round this out, or just take a little bit off, or take a Dremel and just take a little bit off, so that way it will go in. But that's what happens with wet wood. I was pushing it. When I make things with lids out of wet wood, you're really pushing it. This is made out of 3 pieces. I just cut a log into an even shape. I think it was 8 inches or something. Sorry, it's dusty. This was made out of wet wood. I did not finish it all in one day, so when I came back out the next day, I did develop a crack, especially it's folded. Here it started to open up, and here, so it was wanting to spread out this way. So I just put some Tippin, I think 3 probably in there. Took my clamps and just held it overnight, and that seemed to really, really work, and I haven't noticed any movement or anything else in it. The lid has definitely moved. It was, I think, also a crotch piece, made out of crotch piece as well, and it's really like ripply and everything, but I made it to where it would still fit in there. Still, the foot was also made out of wet wood. It hasn't moved too much. And I think it was like firewood that had been sitting there, so it wasn't literally like cut down and then turned the next day kind of wet wood. It was cut down, sat outside for like 6 months, and then I brought it home and cut it up into whatever blanks, or left it in log form and just decided to turn it. So wet wood has its consequences. This one's really interesting. Look how that is going. It's a vase that I turned. I was just playing with shapes, and this was a crotch piece of a small branch. I was playing with shapes and trying to do some hollowing. I'm getting my hollowing tool down pat, and it is Leaning Tower of Vase. So not everything that comes off your lathe is going to be award-winning. I think you win because you got experience. You went for it. You learned. If nothing else, you learned what not to do, what to do. This one so far has not moved, and it's a little thicker in through this area here. And that's another thing too, is turning them as thin as you possibly can, so that it has a less drying. But some woods you just can't turn that thin. Let's think. What else? Oh, these two are pecan, Georgia pecan. The tree fell down at my aunt's property in Georgia, and this one has not moved at all. It may have moved a little bit in the bottom. You can see it rocking a little bit. But this one is an end grain, and the pith is in the very bottom, and it didn't crack. A lot of times I'll put super glue on them while I'm turning or afterwards, so that way it just soaks in there before I put on the finish, and that probably helped it a little bit. This is actually, believe it or not, these two pecan are from the same exact log. This one is the inside with the pith, and I'm assuming this was the same exact log. Both pecan. Isn't that interesting? One's light, one's dark. I did not dye this. I did not put anything. Matter of fact, this one had a lot of punky, like rotten spots, like the tree was diseased a little bit. Maybe the reason why it fell during the storm, but it's moved. It's moved a little bit too. This, between this way and this way, is obviously where the tree was growing like this. So this is where the piths, some of the pith is still in here. So the tree is growing this way. So that's where it's going to be pulling, and it's oblong that way. You can kind of tell where the piths used to be, and some of these, because of the way that they're misshapen. This is like a platter bowl that I did out of oak, spalted oak, and it is all kinds of It's all kinds of wonky, but it's okay. I think it adds a really neat rustic element to the pieces. And some people, just might not be good enough for them. This was a crotch piece, and I think is interesting. You can't feel it, but then you might be able to see it. There is some crazy rippling going on where this crotch piece was. I mean, the wood literally just, it's moving clearly, but the ripple in it is just interesting. So interesting, fascinating to me to see what it does. This one's definitely, it's whooped. A lot of these I have sitting in the box. Some of them I have sitting around holding loose change or keys or, you know, whatever. Some people say, oh, it's sell worthy. To me, I'm like, it's just not good enough because it doesn't meet my expectation. But that's just where I'm at right now at turning. I'm just learning, turning and learning. I do know of several different methods. I read about them. I watch other turners. I'm not completely ignorant, and I'm not trying to teach people how to turn in a sense, or to turn wetwood, or, you know, I think it's more about just turn, you know, get experience by doing it, because no matter what anybody tells you, there's going to be that experience that you have to get on your own and have a real true hands-on understanding. And when you give advice, be humble about it. You got to where you were at because of either your experience or because you were told one way or another. And so none of this is just, you know, we gather information from others and we collectively put it in our little melting pots, and we do with it from there what we do with it. So